I almost lost my marriage twice, and for a long time, I couldn't figure out how. Because in my head, I was doing everything right. See, there was this time in my life where I knew exactly how to do and what to do to get better at work. I knew how to replay a conversation on the drive home. I knew how to sit with a hard meeting and ask myself, could I have said that better? How was my tone? Was it off? Did I actually fix the problem? Or did I just make it worse? If I'm being honest with you, I feel like I had it down to a science, right? I had it on lock. But if I'm also being honest with you, I didn't have a clue of how to do that in my marriage. You know, I was a high performer at work and I was a low performer in my marriage. And the crazy part, I didn't even know it. Because in my mind, I was doing everything that a husband's supposed to do. I was working, I was providing, I handled all the bills, I carried all the stress. Like, I carried the weight of the whole family. So in my head, that meant I was showing up. That meant I was being a good husband, a good partner. But after the second time that I almost walked away, after moving out, after all the therapy sessions, after being forced to actually sit and look at myself, I had to face something that I didn't want to face. I was giving my best thinking, my best discipline, my best energy, all to my career. And I was expecting my marriage to survive off of what I had left over. And if I'm being honest, that had to change. What's going on, YouTube family, and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've been on the channel for a while, you know I've been talking about the provider pressure for a minute. All right. And recently I actually started opening up a little bit more, and I've started talking about loneliness in my life. I started talking about the time away from my family. And I've also mentioned how I've almost lost my marriage on a few separate occasions. What I want to talk about with you all on today is the one thing that actually started turning that all around for me, though. And I'll say this, it's not a tip and it's not a hack. I can say it's actually a habit that I've already had. I had just never pointed it at my marriage. Because honestly, I've always been big on reflection. When it comes to my career, I'm locked in on it, right? On my drives home, I replay the day. I replay every hard conversation. I honestly ask myself, did I actually solve something or did I just make it worse? That type of reflection, it constantly made me better at my job. It made me better at leading people. It made me better at communicating. But I wasn't using that same level of intentionality in my marriage with my wife. And that's honestly where the problem was. Because of that, my marriage faced so much turbulence. It was constant trouble. And I can say this, that season in my life, it was ugly. It exposed a lot in me. It exposed selfishness. It exposed immaturity. It exposed pride in me. And the fact that I genuinely did not know how to love my wife. And I didn't know how to love her the way that she needed to be loved. All right. I remember this one counseling session in particular, and we had just got into this major argument, and I'm gonna call it like it was. All right. It was a big argument about something to do with my job. It was about a coworker, a friend of mine who I was close with, who's obviously the opposite sex. And it made my wife uncomfortable, if I'm being transparent. Not because either of us had done anything wrong, right? Because we hadn't, but it touched something. There was some insecurity there, right? And it was from some past hurt that I obviously caused. And it didn't matter that nothing had actually happened. She was still hurt by it. And I remember sitting there explaining myself that there was nothing going on, right? I hadn't done anything wrong. And I kept repeating that over and over and over again. And I was constantly defending myself. I was trying to defend my truth. I was trying to defend my point. But while I was defending myself, I wasn't listening to her. And then I finally heard it. I heard the pain in her voice. While she tried to explain how it made her feel, you know, she was sitting there crying. And something about that, actually hearing that pain, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Because I had to honestly understand and realize that being a protector, it isn't just financial. It's not just about keeping the lights on. It's protecting somebody emotionally. It was about protecting her mentally and making them feel secure. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't been doing that for my wife. Like, I hadn't been doing that the way that she needed it. I can say this. I left that session and I couldn't shake it. I drove home thinking about it, right? I drove all the way back to Tennessee from Florida thinking about it. And I kept thinking about it for weeks. That was the moment that it actually clicked for me. I had knew how to work, right? I knew how to provide. I knew how to chase success, but I did not know how to actually be a husband to my wife. And after that, after the move out and after sitting with what life would look like if it really ended, after all the therapy, after all the distance and all the tension, the damage, I'll be honest, I started reflecting differently. Not on work, not on performance, not on the next promotion. I started reflecting on my marriage. I started asking myself questions I should have been asking myself for years before that. How do I become a better husband? How do I love my wife the way that she actually needs to be loved? Not just the way I want to love her. How do I stop seeing everything from my side and actually understand what she's feeling? And I want to pause right there, because I think that's where most of us, or a lot of us, miss it as men. We're trying to win in marriage while only looking at it through our own eyes. We're measuring ourselves by our intentions, by our efforts, by the bills we pay, and all the stress that we carry. But marriage, it doesn't run on what you meant. It runs on what your spouse is actually experiencing. And I can say that one was a hard one for me. Here's the whole video if I had to boil it down to one sentence. I knew how to review my performance at work. I had never once reviewed my performance as a husband. That's the shift. That's what actually started changing me. Because once I honestly started reflecting on my marriage the same way I reflected on my job, I started seeing things different. I started seeing things that I had been blind to for years. The first thing reflection exposed to me, it was that I was loving my wife from my perspective, not hers. And that may sound small, but it's not small. It's actually huge. Because in my head, I could tell myself, I'm working hard. I'm carrying the whole load. I'm paying all the bills. I'm staying faithful. I'm being faithful. I'm doing what a husband is supposed to do. So naturally, if I'm being honest, I could look at that list and go, yeah, I'm loving my wife. But the question was never supposed to be, do I think I'm loving her? The question was, does she actually feel loved by the way I'm showing up? That's a completely different question. You can have really great intentions. You can have good intentions and still really love somebody poorly. You can be sincere and still completely miss what they need. And this, I can say this is where I had to get honest about something. I had honestly confused providing with supporting. I think a lot of men, they miss that too. Especially if you're one of the ones that's carrying the financial load, because we always equate that. Because in our mind, it feels like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. And financially, maybe you are. I am. But being a supportive husband, it goes past paying the bills. It goes past keeping the lights on. I had to realize that being supportive also meant being emotionally present. Listening without trying to defend yourself. Especially the second that she says something that's hard, right? Because that's what we do. We go on defense as soon as they say something that's hard. I had to notice her stress. I had to start paying attention to what she actually was carrying, not just what I was carrying. And that exposed something I didn't want to admit. I was so locked in on my own load. I was locked in on my own goals, my job, my stress, my pressure, that I wasn't slowing down enough to actually see hers. And I can say that's not an easy thing to admit, but it's true. The second thing reflection exposed was that I was intentional about growth at work, but I was passive about growth in my marriage. At work, I had systems. I had reflection. I basically ran my own performance review in my head every single day, and nobody ever saw it. I wanted to get better. I wanted to be more valuable. In marriage, a lot of times I was just hoping that things will work itself out. I assumed love, it was enough. I assumed provision was enough. I assumed because we were still together, we were okay. But marriage, it doesn't grow by accidents. You don't become a better husband by default. You don't become more patient, more present, or more emotionally available just because time passes by. Growth in marriage, it has to be intentional too. Same as the growth on your job or at work. And once I saw that, I started asking myself, what would it look like to bring the same discipline I bring to my career into my marriage? Right? What would it look like if I had a successful marriage the same way I had a successful career? That's where things actually started shifting. Now, when I say reflection, I'm not talking about some perfect morning routine, right? There ain't no candles, there's no journaling, there's none of that, all right? That wasn't it for me. For me, what it looked like real life. It looked like when I was praying, when I'm sitting in my car thinking. It looked like when I have my phone open and I'm just typing notes in it. It looked like thoughts in my head when I'm at the gym. It looked like the thoughts on long drives. It was lonely weekends where I didn't have a choice but to sit with my own thoughts. And in those moments, I had to ask myself, what does she actually need from me right now? Did I really listen in that conversation? Or was I just waiting to defend myself? Did I make her feel loved or just manage? Am I showing up as a husband or just as a provider? Some of that reflection, it was painful because it exposed a lot. And I can tell you, it'll expose your selfishness and your pride. The gap between the man you think you are and the man you've actually been. But that's also why it works. Because what you refuse to look at, you can't change it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like or tell you that I figured it out overnight, because I didn't. I haven't. My marriage, it isn't perfect. I'm still learning. Like right now, today, I'm still learning. But I can tell you this honestly. Reflection, it actually helped me stop measuring myself by what I provided financially and started measuring myself by how I show up emotionally. It helped me stop asking, am I doing enough? And I started asking, am I loving her well? That's a better question. It's a harder question. And if you can actually answer it honestly, I can tell you, it'll change you too. So if I had to boil this whole video down, reflection, it exposed two things in me. I was loving her from my side, not hers. And I was intentional about work, but passive at home. And once I started reflecting on my marriage, the same way I reflected on my job, I'll be honest, that's when I actually started becoming a better husband. Not perfect, but better. All right? So if you're a man and you're watching this and you're ambitious and you care about your career and you care about growing, that's not a bad thing, right? That is not a bad thing. That's a great thing. I'm not telling you to stop being driven. Like, be as driven as possible as you can for your family. But don't get so locked into winning outside of your house that you stop paying attention to how you're showing up inside of it. Don't bring the discipline to your job and put your marriage on autopilot. Because honestly, you can become highly effective out in the world and still be checked out in the own place, or the only place that truly matters the most. And that's your home. And if you've been giving more of yourself to your work than your marriage, I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying this because I've lived it. Like, right? This is all about awareness, like becoming more aware of who you are. This is about becoming the man your family actually needs, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally too. Because your wife, she doesn't just need a provider. She needs a husband. She needs a real man. And if you're serious about becoming that, you got to start doing what started to change me. And that's slowing down. That's reflecting. That's getting honest with yourself about the hard things. And that's starting to ask yourself the harder questions. Good intentions don't automatically make you a good husband, but intentionality does. Growth does. Humility, it does too. So if this hit home for you, I want you to drop better husband in the comments. All right. And if you've been giving more discipline to your career than your marriage, drop present. Because honestly, I read all of the comments and I genuinely want to know if this is something that you've wrestled with also. If you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because we're all about truth on this channel, and we're going to continue to be transparent, because we want to see families grow. We want to see marriages stay together. We want to see people win. All right. So until the next time, later.